Thank you to Jesse and Matt for joining me. Thank you for everybody that has joined our webinar. We are here today to talk about the launch of Base Operations Enterprise. This launch really ushers in a paradigm shift in corporate security. Our intention is to empower teams to fully transition from reactive to proactive operations, which has been a dream of mine for a long time. So this version of the platform is powered by, or has been, is a product of thousands of conversations with customers, prospects, with the market, combined with the frontier machine learning and AI that we apply here at Base Operations. And through that input from the market plus our technical capabilities, we've achieved this momentous milestone. So obviously, we're really excited about it. We want to walk you through it as our webinar guests. But first, we'll take the opportunity to introduce who are these talking heads on the webinar today, and then talk to you a little bit about the agenda. So in terms of introductions, I'm Corey Siskin. I'm the founder and CEO of Base Operations. My background is in security. I was an analyst for many years, based in Mexico City, helping companies enter emerging markets and understand environments where you didn't have access to as much data. So this has been, a problem that I've lived personally from the analyst side, now from the side of creating a product to address this challenge. So I will hand it over to Jesse to introduce himself.
Thanks, Corey. I'm the CTO at Base Operations. I'm joined, of course, with a really solid, excellent team of engineers and data scientists. My background has been a little over 20 years in data and deep analytics. So starting with a PhD at Carnegie Mellon in artificial intelligence and really focusing on decision supporting and outcomes driven analytics, right? Digging deep into the data. And then throughout my career, I've worked in large companies like many of you, delivering actionable data value. So those industries range from defense intelligence, finance, insurance, industrial applications, et cetera. And I've really focused my career on helping companies derive value from data and addressing security-related decision support and assessments. And so I'm really excited to present some of the work that the team's been working on in these categories. Matt, turn the time over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jesse. I think I've had a chance to meet almost everyone that's joined the call so far, but it's great to see everyone again. Matt Fuller, I head up our sales team here at Base Operations. For those of you I haven't met, before I started at Base 2.5 years ago, I spent the whole first part of my career in cybersecurity and witnessed sort of a similar paradigm shift that we're seeing today in that industry, where cybersecurity in the late 2000s went from this nice to have, probably should be thinking about it, to a major competitive differentiator. And we saw an influx in investment from venture capital and all sorts of push towards innovation to help solve this problem. And I think we're at a similar shift in physical security. So after meeting Corey and learning about Base Operations, saw this opportunity to help physical security teams take a more data-driven technical approach to becoming proactive and finding new ways to protect their people, assets, and operations. And kind of that's what's inspired me in my journey at Base Operations so far. And while I'm always psyched to talk about it and help people understand where we're trying to help security teams go in the future.
So in terms of agenda setting, for our webinar today, I'm going to be introducing enterprise version and talk about why we built this and who it's for and what it helps you accomplish. Matt will take us through a demo of the capabilities and use some examples along the way to help sort of help you understand what the different features, what purpose they serve. Jesse, doesn't join us as frequently on these kind of webinars, so we're really going to take advantage of his presence here to talk about the technological breakthroughs that we've achieved in the launch of this version, as well as the future roadmap, what's coming, and of course, there'll be lots of back and forth between the three of us throughout, and we'll end with plenty of time for Q&A from our attendees. Feel free to submit questions as we go along, and we will take them at the end. So to get us started, when I think about why we're here, why I started this company. It was really to solve the problems that I saw. Actually, Matt, sorry, if you could like take that down, and I'll cue you in when we want to bring up that slide. Appreciate it. So I'll just monologue here for a little bit about my background. But my experience as an analyst was just sort of challenge after challenge. I loved the work, but there were really difficult aspects to being an analyst. The first one was just a general lack of granular, updated data in order to inform threat assessments. And I feel proud to say that I think we've largely solved that problem here at Base Operations by aggregating, visualizing, and interpreting the world's available data. Jesse will talk later about ways that we're taking that a step further. But that was really sort of the first iteration of Base Operations, the powerful data engine that exists within our platform. There was a second challenge, and that is really it's this concept of, everybody knows that we need to be proactive instead of reactive in security, but so much of the industry is oriented around detecting crises and responding, all which is really important. But when you think about proactive, it's this sort of nebulous space. Like, how do we even do that? How do we even anticipate or know what we're supposed to do? You can't, as consultants say, boil the ocean, or think about think about assessing every threat, but before it occurs. So where do we focus our attention? And a lot of analysts end up in this sort of like hamster wheel of just like, okay, we're going to just do a number of assessments, whether it's periodically, like every month, every quarter, whatever it is, or someone's making a decision, it's basically already made. You need to put together a report to justify that decision or whatever it is. This is really important work, but the way that the process happens, sometimes it just, it feels like a box that you're checking. And I know as an analyst, I frequently felt that some of the work that we were doing was just going in the bottom of someone's proverbial drawer and, not really serving the needs of the business. So what we were looking to address with the enterprise version, what we have addressed is, helping our customers, the security industry, take advantage of that moment to play a bigger role in strategic business initiatives. So I'll tell you, what high level, what is enterprise, and then we'll go into it deeper and deeper in the webinar. Enterprise is a series of features that allows customers to gain a comprehensive barometer of risk across their asset footprint. So with our groundbreaking My Locations dashboard, customers can assess and reallocate resources, surge support when necessary, make meaningful recommendations that prevent incidents before they occur, rather than just reacting afterward. So by leveraging the advanced analytics, modeling, forecasting that Jesse's team has developed, Base Operations Enterprise is truly setting a new standard. Customers can mitigate risk, optimize resource allocation, gain efficiencies, and ultimately reposition the security department as a strategic asset within their organization, rather than just a cost center, which is sort of like the negative stereotype of security department. So I can't emphasize enough how much I think this represents a momentous shift in the industry. And for me, coming from the analyst background, it really is kind of like a dream realized to see this platform live. And the early feedback we've had from customers reflects the sort of grand vision that we had and put into action. So Matt, now if you will bring back that slide. So, I talked about specific features being sort of an answer to different challenges that I face in the industry, different trends that I'm seeing. So I'm going to talk about some industry needs and then the Base Operations solution, and then we'll go into those specific features in Matt's demo and then Jesse's discussion. So something our prospects and customers want to achieve is managing locations at scale and gaining a comprehensive footprint assessment. So it's not just like, how's this location doing? How's this location doing? What is the health of my asset footprint where my teams are located? So that sort of comprehensive knowledge is really important. And that is our, my locations dashboard is our response to that. We'll spend a bit of time in that. Getting out of the assessment hamster wheel I mentioned. So just sort of doing these assessments on sort of a regular programmed cadence, or not in response to sort of changes in the macroeconomic environment, or or what have you. We've introduced prioritization based on change. So you can see all of your locations, what's changed, therefore direct your attention to those locations that are experiencing positive or negative change. A next industry need is to escape generic one-off vendor deliverables. If you're familiar with base operations, you'll know that customizability, highly tailored analysis at scale is our bread and butter. Like, how do you make this not just a general threat assessment, but a risk assessment for your organization in particular? What matters to one company may not matter to the next, and we always keep that in mind with what we build. The next industry need, geographic and granular coverage. Like I mentioned, we've done so much in this arena already, and we're taking it a step further. I'm really excited for Jesse to talk through that, but basically groundbreaking work to create a threats model in environments where we're missing data, it's bad data, it's complicated, to help you basically have a local's knowledge of every corner of the world. So lofty vision, but we're getting there. Avoiding incidents instead of just reacting to them, common theme, forecasting. That's our response to that. So we're getting deeper and deeper into forecasting. And then finally, a lot of people talk about needing a heuristic or a mechanism for developing consistent policies and communication across the organization. How do you take something incredibly complex like a threat landscape and communicate it simply? Risk scoring. People have been asking us for this for a while, so we are excited that we're finally making meaningful advances here and want to share them with everyone. So in some, I've said paradigm shift, like this is a new era for proactive security. It's an opportunity for us as an industry to position the security department as a strategic advantage, to support new lines of business, to play a larger role in strategic decision making. And yeah, enough of me talking. Let's actually take a look at it. I'm gonna hand the mic over to Matt, and we'll be backing it out.
Okay, for those of you that may not have seen the platform before, this is your base operations landing page. We're a SaaS-based tool, so you become a customer base operations, you get license access, and one of the cool and I think unique things about base operations is the way that our platform works is you get unlimited on-demand access to the data, which means no limits to the number of locations you analyze or queries you run or reports that you pull. Really, the goal here is for you to find ways to enhance the value of your security program, that might go beyond how you've traditionally supported it. So there's a couple different ways that our customers will capitalize on the power of the platform. I'm going to start us in what Corey referred to as the My Locations dashboard. This is a newer feature for us that has been recently released in the last month or so that is really going to serve as the foundation for this holistic view of our footprint that we're trying to bring and allow you to do all those proactive functions that Corey mentioned, like allocating resources, focusing your time and attention, and that kind of thing. So what you're looking at here is the My Locations dashboard, and today this is based on change. What this allows you to do is track patterns and trends across your global footprint. And that could be fixed asset locations like your offices. It could be warehouses and distribution centers. It could be preferred hotels if you have a lot of employee travel. We have customers with over 16,000 stores in the platform. So it's really whatever it is that your security team is responsible for, that's what you would consider tracking within this dashboard. And what's cool is just like what you'll see in the platform, everything in the dashboard is dynamic. So if you only wanted to focus on certain location types or focus on locations that are in the platform for certain use cases like event locations or common executive travel locations, you can leverage the filter panel and you'll see the platform adjust based on those locations that you've selected, and all the charts and graphs and things like that follow. So what you're looking at here are a few ways to diagnose change in a meaningful way across your footprint. What this helps us do is take a look at all the locations that we have saved in the platform and see which ones are seeing a high degree and low degree of change. The graphs on the right break those out in a little bit more detail in terms of number of locations experiencing increases and decreases in violent crime and property crime. Everyone loves a heat map, and this is another way to sort of communicate change and where we're seeing the largest volume of change across the globe. On the right-hand side here, you'll see cities that we're in that are seeing the highest degree and lowest degree of change. And then down below, we get really granular, where we're actually tracking change at the radius level. And what we'll see here is the ability to filter all of our locations by a number of different variables. But what a lot of our customers have started to do is, at a regular cadence, look at your locations that are seeing the highest degree and lowest degree of change. This might key you in on an area that, maybe you're getting ahead of a potential trend that has the potential to impact the safety of your people or the willingness of your customers to visit your site, and make those adjustments accordingly. Now, to kind of guide the rest of our conversation, I want to kind of walk through a real life use case as to how you might trigger this to then drill down and do an assessment in a particular location. When I'm looking at my locations that have seen the biggest increase and decrease in change, I see St. Louis pop up on the map of places that have seen a pretty big decrease in total crime over the past 12 months. Sticks out to me because I've been hearing a lot about St. Louis from my HR team. We've had a couple employee-related incidents. Somebody brought a gun to work because they felt unsafe commuting to work. This is a real-life retail example. I was also recently sent this article from HR about the slight increase in homicides year over year that we've been seeing around the city. And what the team wants to know is, are these things happening around our store locations? And what are the other things that we might want to take into account as we think about the rest of 2024 and preparing for potential threats in St. Louis? So I'm going to filter to my St. Louis locations. I happen to have 4 in this particular city, and I'm going to use the location function here to go straight to the map. And what you're going to see simply by clicking in that location or typing in the address, you're circumventing all this manual effort of going and reaching out to the local police department and pulling the latest CSV of incidents and filtering out duplicates and dealing with anomalies. All that data is available for you, enriched with a ton of context. And when we think about context, we think about that in the form of different map views. So you'll see the opportunity to look at boundary maps, which show its relative risk of different neighborhoods throughout the city, heat maps, and ultimately the individual lat long, as well as the ability to manipulate time series, time of day, and the event types that you're looking at. So let's focus on that homicides use case up front. And that article was talking about year to date. So here we have, I've kind of pre-filtered this, but here we're looking at year to date, and I'm going to get rid of all crime types except homicide. And I'm going to switch over to my events view. And now we're looking at where all these homicides have occurred year to date throughout St. Louis. And I want to start to pull up and better understand different patterns, trends, and the data associated with these events, right? So here I can see at the city level, year to date, we're seeing about 81 homicides throughout the city, right? And we can see our different locations that we saved in the platform and where those concentrations really lie. We can see in this location that we have downtown that there seems to be a larger number of dots. And clicking in that location, we can see there's been 5 homicides here over the past 6 months. We can also quickly understand some additional points of context, which are, when are these things happening during the day? Our stores only open 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. It looks like these events are predominantly happening late at night and early in the morning. And being able to drill down into that event view kind of shows us that things are really happening between like 10:30 p.m. and like 4 a.m., right? Which, while it's important to know there's been 5 homicides here over the past 6 months, it's also helpful to know that it doesn't appear to be that dangerous during the daytime. So helpful for our response to HR there. As we click around the stores, we'll kind of see some more of the same. We see 5 out of 81 of those homicides occurred within a half a kilometer of this store in downtown. We see 3 have occurred at this store that's a little bit more on the northwest side of things. What's interesting about this store is 2 of the homicides over the past 6 months have actually occurred pretty early in the day. Those other ones were late at night and early in the morning. These are more like 3:30 and 4:30 in the afternoon, which is definitely something you want to keep in mind if that type of thing has a tendency to happen here. You can kind of go store by store. What we'd find is, you could either look at this at an individual store basis and show, 6% of the homicides occur within a half a kilometer of this store downtown, 3.5% occur with this one uptown. Or we could look across our whole footprint, and what we would see is that 9 out of the 81 or 11% of the homicides that have occurred year to date in the city are happening within half a kilometer of our store footprint. Just different ways to analyze the data and pass it on to the team. So that's like one real life example. But just wanted to show you all the other ways that you can kind of drill down and really get to know a particular location. And this analytics panel on the right was really designed to speed up that time to insight based on those thousands of conversations that Corey mentioned of what are the common questions that people are asking of the data. So we could surface that for you and let you focus on the deeper questions. So whether it's getting that quick understanding of what's happening in the general area, things like total counts of incidents, the incident that represents the largest percentage of total, breakout of crime based on time of day. If you only had 10 seconds to look at a location, what are those key things that I would want to report on? Being able to find different patterns and trends. Are we seeing a meaningful increase or decrease in activity, and what's driving that increase? Being able to drill down and better understand that 17% change that we saw. What's contributing to that change? Is it violent crime? Is it property crime? And then threat breakdown that really helps you understand what you need to care about. All the way down to that sort of individual event view and ultimately trend lines by data source. So just a lot of ways to slice and dice the data. We drill down into these locations really quickly. Some interesting things that we'll see is, at the city level, we see nonviolent theft as, the largest event that's occurring, followed by simple assault, burglary, and robbery. And it's interesting to understand sort of like the unique threat profile of each of the stores. We see that downtown nonviolent theft continues to be the number one thing so far this year, but we also see, drug and alcohol violations bubble their way up to the top, and we see similar volume of robbery and simple assault. So it's all about just understanding how can I customize my my mitigation and deterrent measures and allocate resources more effectively to capitalize on that limited budget that I usually am offered on the security side of things. Now we could get really detailed into here, but ultimately, again, everything around here is about speed to insight and speed to deliverable. So we've introduced a number of capabilities that help you productize this data in a meaningful way. The most powerful one, I believe, is the automated reporting functionality that we've rolled out. And what we offer is the ability to create default reports based on granularity, quick one-page executive summaries, and then custom reports if you really wanted to understand some of the nuance at the city, neighborhood, and radius level. What that ultimately translates into is an executive-ready deliverable in a matter of minutes that allows you to add your key insights and takeaways that are relevant from that quick 5-minute analysis that you just did, but backed by all the data and metrics that we've made available within the platform, helping you tell the story of the key takeaways or recommendations that you've put forward. So all of this has kind of been built to streamline that threat intelligence lifecycle of understanding my requirements and knowing where to spend my time, gathering and processing the data, analyzing the data, and then productizing that data to disseminate for key stakeholders. So really what we're trying to do is give you those cycles back in your day so you could focus on the meaningful work of actioning data and continue to elevate the quality of your program as you continue to evolve. Cool. Anything else I missed or any other features that you think we should go through, team?
I think that was solid, and we can come back to things as they come up or as necessary and as we talk about our technological breakthroughs.
Perfect.
Cool. With that, Jesse, I'm excited for you to speak to all the work that goes on behind the scenes. A primary goal for us at Base Operations is to create an incredibly intuitive interface. And that's something that we get a lot of positive feedback on. But, we're like ducks that look calm on the surface, and then there's furious machine learning algorithms and whatnot happening under the surface. So I'm excited for you to elucidate some of that, Jesse.
Fantastic. Thanks, Corey. And Matt, that was a great demo. Thank you. Appreciate your walkthrough. I'd like to focus now specifically on the My Locations page, or refocus specifically on the My Locations dashboard. This dashboard represents the introduction of a footprint level analysis to your locations. Those locations could be any type: office buildings, warehouses, parking lots, event venues, whatever type of locations you track in facilitation of your organization's security needs. Where in the past, Base Operations has focused predominantly on the assessment of individual locations. The My Locations dashboards adds tools to proactively manage risk in your asset or across your asset footprint as a portfolio of locations. So what Matt demonstrated was the first step or the MVP of our My Locations analytics capabilities. I'd like to highlight a few of the types of value that we're targeting and where do we go next with this footprint level capability. So there are three central points of value that I'd like to highlight vis-a-vis the My Locations dashboard to begin creating this this paradigm shift that Corey had alluded to earlier in security intelligence. So the three value props that I want to touch on. First, proactive awareness of emerging or evolving risks. Second, the prioritization of time and resources. And thirdly, the security communications. Okay, so proactive awareness. Let's touch on that one first. So as a quick aside, determining the threat trend and therefore also change turns out to be a fairly non-trivial exercise. The data, as I'm sure all of you have experienced, are inherently variable. We have many ups and downs. We of course have anomalous spikes and anomalous dips. The data are also very noisy and with reporting inconsistency and gaps. And so I'm going to touch on the challenges in a moment, but I'd like to highlight here that it is essential to deliver a capability like this, a capability that talks about trending and change, that you begin to account for all of this noise so that you can distinguish between signal that's indicative of a real change in the threat landscape versus what's a byproduct of the noise. And we've begun laying this foundation, and change and trend analysis represent the first outcomes of the foundation, the analytic foundation that we've been laying down. We will, of course, quickly build upon this and mature the content and extend the capabilities. So one, we have several additional vectors to analyze your footprint. We're looking at change now. We'll be adding in the near future threat level in a way that's comparable across locations so that you can understand, well, where's the highest risk associated and how does that break down and distribute across my locations? Breaking down your locations by type, by custom tag, and other aspects. Inclusion of forecasting, which I'll talk about in a little bit as well. And then recent events. Now, these might be policy-based events or other large trend impacting current events, but being able to give you a view of, hey, here are the important things, the important current events that are happening that will impact the threat profile of my location. So you can put that threat analysis in context. As we begin to layer in shock events, not just by making them known or surfacing them as being recent events that are happening, but also beginning to integrate those more meaningfully into the analysis. That impacts your situational awareness of the threat environment as well as your planning in a couple of different ways. And so, for example, let's say we have a scheduled shock event like the Olympics. We will begin integrating these shock events in forecasts. So similar to seasonality, accounting for the movement anticipated due to that type of shock event in that particular location. And then also noting for analysts, like where we expect that change from normal impact to be, right? And a different kind of event are current events, which were not scheduled, that were previously unknown. So something emerging is happening. Protesters starting, I've got a big, social movement. What do I anticipate the effect of this being over the coming months? So those are two different types of shock events, known and unknown, and some ways that we can think about integrating those into the analytics to provide additional insight. All right, now prioritization of time and resources. We did talk about this one a little bit. Matt touched on this, and when we think about proactive, again, the first level here is also the trend and change analysis. Which locations are changing the most? Let's rank sort those locations and identify which may need additional attention, right? Now, what's next in terms of prioritization? Comparative analysis. being able to side-by-side compare locations. And again, notably here will be the introduction of risk scoring. So risk scoring is your relative or comparable level of risk of your locations condensed into a single number, right? I think all of you are aware with this concept. This is perhaps the most requested feature that we get, and for good reason, because it really provides the most basic means of comparison, of prioritization, and the simplest way to communicate a threat at a location. So in upcoming releases, we'll include
Jesse, sorry, do you mind if I just pause you there? There's a reason why we've waited to add this into the platform. There are, we've seen examples of other risk scores out there. Our customers and prospects, the industry talks about examples of risk scores, and they're, they're working for some, they're not working for a lot of people because they're not detailed. They don't understand how they work. They're not relevant and tailored to the company. The work required to achieve a highly relevant risk score is, in Jesse's words, what do you say, like non-zero, which is engineering for super, super hard. And so that's the reason we have waited to take on this effort, because we wanted to do it right. And we, our customers have a high level of trust in base operations and the numbers we put forward. So that's why, this is the right moment for us to be launching this.
Absolutely fantastic. And we'll touch on a few of those details about what we're doing to make that reliable and consistent across your whole footprint of locations in just a few minutes. So thank you, Corey. All right, so upcoming releases, we'll start to see risk score roll out, and like Change, you'll be able to rank sort by threat level and really focus in on the type of threat events or the time period, all of those things. So just focus in on what's important to you, and it will update and continue to adapt as data comes out. Very much a data-driven approach, like all things base operations. All right, so threat score, that'll be really fun and interesting. Forecasting is another one on prioritization. And then looking a little bit further out, as we start to fold in internal customer incidents and security measures, being able to associate the relationship between external events to the likelihood of internal incidents, being able to understand the impact of security measures on your internal incidents, and optimizing the resource allocation and doing ROI analyses of the security measures, all wrapped in one. So you have external, internal events, the measures that you take, and the impact that you anticipate from those. All right, the last bullet on here is communication, not to be underestimated, and it's important. How do we tell the story of security to catalyze change, to facilitate decisions? So much of the role of security analysts and security departments is about effectively communicating that with stakeholders to manage risk and to shape the business according to the security awareness and knowledge. Now, in the future, we'll just continue to mature and improve these. We'll increase the usability of the report generator and the analytics. We'll add additional views and breakdowns in the dashboard so that you have more ways of understanding and really communicating what's essentially happening across your portfolio. And we'll be adding in footprint level reports, as well as the location specific reports that we had today. First one I want to talk about is our global threats model. This, by the way, if we look at these data really quick, these are a couple interesting examples of those data quality issues. So this first example, Seattle, we see a couple reporting modalities. In this particular case, we can actually identify and quantify the changes in reporting. So we've added some new categories, and we see the introduction of the categories start to shift, from the left to the right. We'll start to shift the reporting numbers up. right? And so being able to capture that and look at it consistently is really important. The lower one's also super interesting. We see a couple things here. This is New York. So when we see this huge spike, anomalous spike, this is where we got a big data dump from like 911 data that just spiked it up. So it's an anomaly. It turns out to be just noise. The other, we see this dip between 2020 and 2021. This is actually a legitimate shock event that's due to COVID. And we saw a decrease in those crime rates during the period in which we had lockdowns and then an increase. And so being able to account for that noise is really important. Today we have the initial foundations of our analytic methodology, trend analysis. In that trend analysis, accounting for anomalies, imputing missing values, etc. Our next step will be to provide more than an incremental evolution of these capabilities, but a real big step change in how we handle robustly the data challenges. We are in the process of creating a series of deep multimodal machine learning models that estimate threat levels, the cycles, the trends. We train these data based on the global threat patterns that we see across all locations. We account for regional effects, such as seasonality, weather, regional trends in our model. And as the data is strong in a locality, the model becomes hyper localized to that area. And where we have underrepresentation of data, it becomes more regional. We account for things like population demographics, points of interest like police stations, hospitals, courthouses, different types of stores, which turn out to be really good proxies for things like foot traffic or the dynamic population in a location. And we explicitly include things like shock events. So this applies to all granularities, cities down to sub 1 mile granularities. And what this is going to do is it's going to significantly extend our effective coverage and consistency in the data. So the first release will deal with the aforementioned noise or challenges in the data so that it's consistent and interpretable. Second phase, we begin to enhance the granularity, both temporal and spatial, so we can look at locations that have citywide data and start to estimate what it looks like at a more granular level. And then third phase is where we begin to do estimates in areas that are underrepresented with data altogether to get some insight into what's happening where data is not well available. Okay. Next, I'm going to step through these looking at the time pretty quickly. Forecasting. This one's pretty well known. What I want to hit to here is maybe next step. First step is trend forecasting. We're all pretty familiar with trend forecasting. With the global threats model, we're going to do a few really interesting things looking down the road. So one is shock events and the propagation of shock events, but not just temporally, but spatially. So how do we expect shock events to impact hotspots and that sort of question? Okay, let me jump into another because we're at time here pretty much. The last one I want to include here is risk score. What will our risk score look like? Our risk score is going to be comparable. We'll demonstrate a comparable level of risk. It'll be on a scale of 0 to 100. It will dynamically update with the data as it's being reported. It'll be tailorable to the types of threats that you care about, given your use case and company needs, and it'll be granular down to the sub-mile in diameter level. This is the simplest way to communicate level of threat. Now we'll start with US-based scores. We'll supplement these with country level scores, and then we'll begin to mature into a full global scores, creating correlative proxies to estimate the differences in reporting that we mentioned earlier across locations. And so this is where we bridge that. What's the difference regionally, and how do we account that in a real meaningful and data-driven way?
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. Really helpful to understand sort of the challenges that your team is overcoming in order to present such a consistent view. One of the questions that has come in is when will capabilities such as global threats model and risk scoring be available?
Global threats model, version 1 is planned to be released late Q3, potentially early Q4, and then we'll just continue to release updates and maturation and detail from there.
Cool. Thank you. Maybe Matt, one for you. Are customers using My Locations dashboard today, and how?
Yeah, great question. It's a relatively new feature, but we've seen it adopted pretty quickly across our entire user base. I think when you look at the customers that we serve, it ranges from large retail companies with really over 15,000 locations, to national banks, to smaller companies that are serving only a few markets. You can imagine when you're talking about tens of thousands of locations that it's become a really useful tool in terms of like the 80-20 rule. Like, where should I be spending the majority of my time, right? Canceling out the noise and going from having to go to travel around to different store locations to really dig into the details and understand why certain things might be occurring, to taking a more data-driven approach and more effectively allocating your team's time and the resources as necessary. So cutting through the noise has been a really big one for the banks and retail companies that have taken to the base operations platform. I think on a smaller scale, you have the ability to get really granular in market with the radius-based change. So while we have seen, reflected, change that you see at the city level is oftentimes reflected at the radius level, that's not always the case. And there are many cities around the world where the city is changing differently than specific neighborhoods, right? And when you might have 3-4 stores or branch locations or a few offices spread throughout the city, it can be helpful to know when your location is changing in a different way relative to the rest of the city. And the My Locations dashboard has helped to surface some of those insights today. So really, I think the initial core use case is like attention and resource prioritization, but those are sort of the two extremes of the two.
And a follow-on for that, for either, is how can I share insights and data with staff who won't access or who don't have access to these dashboards, such as store managers, warehouses, or offices?
Yeah, good question. So one cool thing that we didn't touch on in the demo about the My Locations dashboard is access to Base Operations Enterprise also gives you access to our monthly threat intelligence digest. What that is essentially a more in-depth infographic based on the dashboard, but calls out certain areas that you really should be paying attention to, and then a level deeper of like what types of crimes or events are driving the increase or decrease in crimes in those key areas. So it's a big first step towards us pushing you more information that you need to know ahead of time, as opposed to you having to go in the platform to consume it. And this is something that our customers are finding really valuable and sharing with security and non-security stakeholders alike.
Thanks, Matt. Oh, go ahead.
One thing I'd add to that is like every chart and map view in the application is easily exportable on an individual basis, in addition to the reporting downloads where you get multiples, like we talked about earlier. And we'll be continuing to add in additional ways to export those data and images.
Thank you. We're almost at time. So I'll wrap by saying, if you're familiar with base operations, if you've heard of us, you know that we have a very strong focus on granular street level threat intelligence. And that has been, an area where we've really distinguished ourselves and done something totally different. Base Operations Enterprise represents the next evolution of our growth, which is really about changing the work that security departments do and the role that they play within the organization, to really compel them or propel them into adopting this role of strategic advantage within the organization. So, our customers are loving what we have released so far. We're really excited to get it into the hands of new prospects, new individuals in the security industry. So we look forward to furthering the conversation. Please reach out if you have further questions for us. If you want to check it out, if you want a tailored demo, we'd be happy to set up some time. Matt or Jesse, any concluding remarks from you?
I think on my end, I know we rushed through a few of the features at the end, but I think one of the things that outside of like the global threat model and the consistency in coverage that is a major problem that we're trying to solve. Being able to tailor your own unique threat score is something that I think organizations might take a little bit of time to realize the full value of, but when you really start to think about the value of being able to create more policy-based decision making and communicating the results of a complicated analysis in a simple way to business leadership, it's going to open up a lot of opportunity for security to get ahead of the game and tell their story in a different way. So really excited about the long-term implications of some of these features that will prove out with our customers over time.
I may just add in, like, I'm really excited when I think about the analytics and data. What you really want is you want good coverage, data and insights across your entire location. You want that data to be actionable and interpretable. And I'm really excited about some of these analytic enhancements that we're doing, this foundation that we're laying, because it's going to make those data available and actionable in a way that's just not even been close to possible up to this point.
Okay, well, Jesse and Matt, thank you for joining me. To our guests, thank you for joining as well. And we look forward to continuing the conversation. Bye, everyone.